guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. It's Tana-mas Day 10.
Jingle bell.
So in today's video, I'm going to be reading two different creepypasta stories to you because I don't know about you guys, but I personally love watching videos of people reading off creepypastas or like scary story videos because I find them just like so interesting. So I decided I should do this, and I've been thinking about doing this for a while. I just haven't really found a story that I liked. But then today I was looking and stuff, and I found a couple different Christmas themed ones. So I decided I'm doing Tana-mas right now. It'd be the perfect opportunity to be reading some Christmas ones. So I hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's get right onto it. Let's go. So I have my phone right here, so I'm just going to be reading these off. Also, if you guys like this video, comment down below if like you enjoy me reading these and like you like listening to them, because if you do, I'll definitely film some more. So the first one I'm going to be reading is Black-Eyed Children at Christmas. So I've heard of the Black-Eyed Children before. If you haven't, I suggest go watching a video like Haley Reese had a really good one explaining it. I suggest go watching that. It'll really like explain it to you. Or Jessie V, I think she has a good one too. So let's get started. Mrs. Delphine Smithers was an 83-year-old who lived by herself with her cat. Her husband had passed 2 years prior, and her children had since grown up and left the nest. But come Christmas time, Miss Smithers gets her joy whenever her grandchildren paid a visit. She thought of the looks on their faces whenever she served them Christmas cookies and other pleasantries. This Christmas, she made some sweet and salty bark and kept it on the kitchen table. She found herself sitting down in her favorite chair knitting a scarf when there came a sharp knock on the door. She jumped a bit, not expecting any visitors at the moment. "Can we come in?" Smithers tentatively laid the scarf on the arm of the sofa and grabbed the chair. Her frail bones popped and shifted, getting up from the chair. Smithers collected her walking stick and trudged rigidly towards the front door. Another sharp knock rang out, that time more agitated than previously. "I'm coming! Hold on!" Smithers yelled. She grasped the doorknob and turned it counterclockwise. The door creaked open. On the other end of the door were two children, a boy and a girl. The boy appeared older, presumably about 13. He wore a denim hoodie and gray pants. He was holding the hand of an 8-year-old girl who was wearing a blue dress with white lace. For whatever reason, the children had their heads bowed, looking at their feet. The boy repeated his question, "Can we come in?" Smithers scratched her head. It was at 10 p.m. Why would these children be at her house at that time of the night? Somehow, the boy must have realized what she was thinking. "We need to borrow your phone. My cell phone battery is dead." Smithers thought more about the suddenness of having these unexpected guests. But they were children regardless. At the very least, she could grant them this one request. She nodded her head, gesturing the two children in. Smithers directed them into the living room where her cat droned awake from the ruckus. When it sets its eyes on the two mysterious children, the cat arched its back and hissed. Smithers walked over to silence her cat. "Lex, these are our guests. Behave yourself." The cat meowed in defeat before running out of the living room and into the kitchen. The two children sat on the sofa, their eyes still hidden. Smithers went to the kitchen and pulled out the plate of sweet and salty bark. She returned to the living room and bent down to the children's eye levels. "Care for some sweets?" The boy looked up. There was a good reason as to why he was shielding his eyes. They were devoid of color or pupils, nothing more than pitch-black nothingness. Whatever he was, he assuredly was not of the same earthly realm. The girl looked up as well. Her eyes matched the coal blackness of the older boy. And yet, most bizarre, Smithers smiled at the children, despite the hollow sockets that they call eyes. The children were speechless at first. They shared a puzzled glare. The girl waved her hand in front of Smithers' face, but Smithers didn't follow the path of it. They leaned in closer, realizing that Smithers' eyes were glazed over in a thin sheet of blue. She was blind. Smithers suddenly frowned. "Oh, I'm sorry. You don't care for them?" Thank you," the boy said. He took a piece of the sweet and salty bark and broke it in his hand before passing the girl a piece. Their heavy teeth ground down on the sweets. On this aside, the two children couldn't help but bask in the sweetness and saltiness of the snack. They indulged themselves in more of the sweets before getting up. They looked at the decorations with curiosity. On top of the fireplace, on a stand, was a small replica of the nativity scene. From her mental notes, she figured that the two children had stopped at the fireplace. "Isn't it such a lovely display?" she asked. "Do you know the story of Christmas?" "We know about your Jesus," the boy responded. "Our ancestors spoke a lot about him." Confused by his statement, Smithers nevertheless allowed the two children to further marvel at the Christmas decorations. The girl rustled the Christmas tree, causing the ornaments to fall on the ground. She seized when she sensed Smithers getting upset. The two children played with the nutcrackers and listened to Christmas songs. The hours edged by slowly until a sudden electrical surge generated through the house. The two children looked at each other and back at Smithers. "We have to go now. Our parents are here." A bright light shone through the windows. Outside was a spherical, smooth craft standing on three legs. A large, skinny-looking creature exited the craft and stood there at the door. The two children collected the plate of sweet and salty bark and exited through the front door. There came a sound of a large whistle, as if there were 1,000 steam engines situated inside. Within a flash, the craft was gone. Smithers called out for the two children, only to be met by a great silence. She closed the door and returned to her knitting. So that's the end of the story. It ends on like a cliffhanger. It's like really kind of weird but interesting at the same time. See, I already know the story of the black-eyed children, so I'm a little confused. Like, why didn't they do anything? Because, like, yeah, I know it's really weird that they exited in a spacecraft, but, like, the black-eyed children are, like, supposed to, supposedly, if you let them in your house, do something, like, bad. And, like, I guess knocking over ornaments isn't really that bad. So I'm just, like, confused, but then I'm, like, that's, like, really interesting. It's, like, kind of a plot twist. Like, I expected them to come in and do something really bad, and they didn't. And then I was like, oh, the story must be going normal. And then their parents are there, and it's a large spacecraft with a very tall, skinny thing, like creature. And then they just disappear. So that was very interesting. So let's move on to the second story. All right, so the second story is called If You Hear Sleigh Bells. Run. I can't think of anything else to say other than run. But I guess for that to make sense, I'd have to go into detail about what happened 10 years ago when I was about 8 years old. I've always loved Christmas, ever since I was able to understand the word Christmas. Even the name sounds festive. I've grown up with a story and a song about good old St. Nick and the warm holiday imaginable. And in short, one day I decided that I would see him for myself, as most kids with the same upbringing often considered. I prepared for at least a week, navigating around potential landmines like parents being awake or being caught by the jolly fat man himself, or even just leaving evidence that I was ever there. I decided that I'd venture downstairs at 3 a.m. armed with a blanket and some black coffee to keep me awake. Although I couldn't stand the bitter taste and often found myself wanting to regurgitate it every time I took a sip. When the day finally came, oddly enough, I found myself hearing Santa Claus is Coming to Town playing just about everywhere for just as long as I could stand. I hear the lines, he sees you when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, he knows if you've been bad or good, over and over again. But I guess something just didn't click, and I really wish it had. I really, really wish it had. Because that night I saw something I desperately wish I could unsee. Even now, hearing the sound of a sleigh bell, I reflexively recoil as if I expect something deadly to appear consecutively. The air that night was stiff and chilly. It was coming down violently outside my window, and every step I took towards the stair revived my pulse with a renewed sense of dread. Both the dread of being caught and the dread that you feel descending any flight of creaking stairs. The dread you feel when it startles you, the sudden and yet drawn-out sound that for a split second you might mistake for a human cry. And yet, I continued down the stairs until I reached the place I would be hiding. A small nook between the wall in the living room, the sofa, and the radiator from which I had anticipated being able to discreetly witness Santa's arrival. So I waited there, and I waited, and I waited. I must have been through at least my second shot of black coffee, certain that I had been there for at the very least 2 hours. When I glanced at the time, and to my horror, not 1 minute had passed. Not one. It was still 3 a.m. I thought certainly that the clock must have been wrong. Yes, surely that clock was broken. I'd literally been counting seconds upon minutes, waiting for anything to happen. I'd almost convinced myself the time had passed and that clock was stuck. For whatever reason, I'd almost been successful in calming myself down when I noticed the wind had stopped. The wailing sound of the wind, which resembled a human scream, and the occasional knock of an angry gust on any of the closed windows had completely halted. It was silent, completely silent, so silent, in fact, that all I could hear was the sound of my shaking breath. A silence so loud that it accentuated the darkness. Every shadow, every dark corner seemed to reach for me at once, as if it was trying to swallow me up too, and all I could hear was my own increasingly struggled breathing. And I stayed like that, until I heard it. Something which shattered the silence, once more breaking the comfort I had settled onto and cutting through me like the jagged end of a cold knife. It was a jingle. A soft, rhythmic chime set to the slightly crooked gait that sounded more like someone dragging themselves around by their elbows than like walking. My first thought when I heard the unmistakable chime of the sleigh bells was that Santa was finally here. But as the sound grew closer, I noticed it was accompanied by a soft whimpering sound, which sounded close enough to human to be recognizable, but inhuman enough for me to be unable to tell how old the voice was or how feminine or masculine it was. Pulse quickened. I knew this wasn't Santa. With each dragging step, the sleigh bells only grew louder and the whimpering became more clear. E, C's, Y, Hen, Epen. It sounded even less human than the whimpering had. The speech was broken up, distorted. That thing spoke as if it was literally choking on its own lung. Step. Chime. The darkness was swallowing me up once more, eating away at my sanity. I found it difficult to breathe. It was getting closer, and the crooked melody of the sleigh bells only grew louder. I held my breath between every pause for every step. Every agonizing second before I heard the next chime. He, n, z, what, it, oh, wait. Step, chime, e, no, it, yeah, but, it, or, good. It was close, so close. I didn't know where it was, but it was so close. I could feel the air begging to suffocate me, each chime stealing my next breath more violently than the last. I could almost make out what he was saying now. The voice was so grossly distorted it sounded like an animal trying to speak while choking on its own blood. Creak, chime, and with that I saw it. It finally came into view and stared straight at me, and more violently than ever I fought to keep the coffee and my dinner down. Skin was stretched tightly over its face, gray and leathery, with its mouth twisted into a sinister smile, or as close to a smile as it could be called. There was a hole in its lower jaw, from which I saw its tongue hanging out with dried blood clinging to the lining of the cavity in its beard, sparse white hair barely clinging to its chin. From its torso all the way down to its neck, the bells were wrapped around it to the point where if the creature so much as moved its head the wrong way, it might have accidentally garroted itself. I tried to scream, I tried to move, but the silence had already devoured my cry, and the darkness already crushed my limbs. I could only watch as the creature slowly hobbled towards me, each sleigh bell ringing, engraving itself into my memory as its distorted grimace widened, causing a flow of fresh warm blood to flow from the cavity in its face. Girl, shouldn't be at this hour. Time suddenly resumed, and in a moment, with some inhumane strength, the creature had torn me from my nook and thrown my limp, petrified body into a wall. Doors and windows clattered with the angry gust of wind, and snow billowed in from the window. The creature must have entered, chilling my body. I tried to look up. I tried to breathe, but before I could try to cry out again, a chain of sleigh bells was wrapped around my neck. The freezing metal dug in my skin and choked me. My eyes began to roll back as I frantically grabbed them in the darkness. And God, the ringing, I could hear them. They chimed as they cut off my air, darkening my vision, intermingled with my choked-off sobbing. The bells almost sounded like screaming, and the screaming of the bells, that which sounded like other children all crying out together to make the bell sound, before it all faded to cold, unconscious silence, was the last thing I heard. I awoke upon the cold floor with half a pitcher of coffee clutched tightly in one hand and the blanket wrapped around me. I exhaled quietly, relieved that it had all been a dream, and proceeded with my day as normal. I had almost convinced myself it had never happened. That is, until my mother asked me where that bruise around my neck came from. And outside, I heard a single sleigh bell ring in the darkness of the early winter morning. That's the end of all the stories. I definitely think the last story was, like, the creepiest and, like, weirdest. That one, like, freaked me out a little bit, like, and I don't get freaked out too easily. And that freaked me out. Because like after it said that he had like woke up with the blanket and clutching a pitcher of coffee, I was like, oh, it must have just been a dream, like a really creepy dream. And then his mom's like, where's that bruise around your neck from? I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck? So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the stories. Hopefully I picked out some good ones. Also, comment if you like this, because I would definitely film more of these. These are like really fun to film. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the big red button below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.